I want to tell you how I went from being a bit of a moron to having a life where I can conduct choirs and orchestras, perform with some pretty great ensembles, and compose music which actually gets performed. But more than that, I want to tell you how you can have the same. So you got to imagine me walking round in circles, aged about 8 years old. And as I'm walking round and around and around at this exact spot in the beach, I'm singing to myself. And I'm surrounded by sunbathers who are all thinking, what the hell is wrong with this kid? And actually my family thought exactly the same too. They were wondering, why is he always walking around in circles, singing to himself or talking to himself? Why is he always doing that? And the actual reason is that 90% of the time I was imagining music in my head. And the other 10% of the time, I was an international super spy. But 90% of the time, I was, composing symphonies or composing film music in my head. That was what I was doing. But the thing is, at that age, at 8 years old, or even at 12 years old, 14 years old, I had no means of capturing my ideas. I had no way of capturing, putting down into, the real world, these musical ideas that I was having in my head. So I'd dream up symphonies on the beach, and then I'd go back to my holiday cottage, and I'd have my dinner, I'd fall asleep, and by the next morning, all those ideas were gone. They were just absolutely gone. My head was probably literally empty. It does make me wonder about all those musical ideas that float around people's heads, which have gone to waste because they don't have the means to capture it, to write it down, to turn it from just an idea into something real, something concrete. So every year of my life, literally every year of my life, I've come back to this exact beach. So every time I return here, I kind of get these echoes of childhood memories. But it's also a chance to reflect on how much I've grown, how much I've changed in that time. And this year, I can reflect on a massive change, because now I'm in a position where I can record those musical thoughts, where I can capture them down on paper. And it's actually been a really nice holiday, because I can wake up and I can pour myself a coffee and I can look at this gorgeous view of the beach and I can compose some music. No piano, no computer, just me, my thoughts, this incredible view, and a pencil and paper. I've always found that my best creative thoughts tend to come when I'm in nature, when I'm by the beach or on the cliffside or walking in the woods, but definitely not when I'm in front of a bloody computer screen. But 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, I had no means of capturing these musical thoughts. They were just ideas that by the next day would probably be gone forever. But now I can capture these thoughts. Now I can turn my musical ideas into something real. And that feels so freeing and so exciting to me. And by the way, this isn't some magic trick. You can do it too. The only reason I can do this is because I decided to take it seriously. This idea of learning to read music, write music, and process music orally. These are literally skills that you can learn if you decide to. It's practical music theory. And learning practical theory will give you the tools needed to capture your musical ideas, even with just a pencil and paper. And that for me is absolutely priceless. It feels like true freedom when you don't even need a piano and you can just separate yourself from that computer screen. Because as much as I love having a piano and a computer, sometimes I think that those things really actually dampen your imagination. Because the second you put your hands on the keys, when you hear, the response from the piano or the response from the computer, you're actually dampening the imagination that you had, the sounds that you had in your head. Whereas here, with this gorgeous view, all you need is a pencil, some paper, and your thoughts, and you can sketch out a completely new piece of music. And that for me is something really special. That for me is something worth treasuring. So I want to explain to you very simply how you can get to this point where you can read music, or you can literally write down the musical thoughts that are in your head straight onto paper. But there's a deeper question here. How do we learn musical skills in general? How do we develop our core musicianship? How do we learn these skills in a way that really sinks in so that they become intuitive, so that you become truly fluent in them? So I think I've figured out the answer to this question, and it's something that so many people get wrong. The trick is, whenever you learn a new piece of theory, you need to use it actively. You need to actually use every little thing that you learn. That's what makes it really sink in. It's not good enough to just read a book. You need to use what you read. For example, I could read a book on tennis, but that wouldn't make me a good tennis player. And in the same way, you might read a book on music theory, but that doesn't make you a good musician. Whenever you learn something in music, you then need to practice reading it, writing it, and processing it orally. Can you read it, write it, and hear it? For a really simple example, loads of people know what this is. This we might call a semiquaver or a 16th note. You might know the name of this thing, but can you read complex rhythms of 16th notes? Can you read them fluently? Can you write the rhythms that are in your head in 16th notes? As I say, that's a really simple example, but it extends to all of practical music theory. You need to not just learn it, you need to be able to read it, write it, and process it mentally. When you learn something, don't just read about it, use it as much as possible, in as many different contexts as possible. You need to use it. Read it, write it, listen to it. That's how you develop true musical fluency. That's how you develop musical intuition. And that's how you get to the point where you're a confident, fluent sight reader. Or that's how you get to the point where you can just go to the beach and jot your musical thoughts straight onto paper without needing to run off to the computer. You might know that I've almost finished preparing a training program which does exactly this. It's kind of like my musical boot camp. Loads of people have been asking for it, and I've been working on it for the last year, and it's almost ready, so I'm really excited. But this is exactly what it does. It combines learning theory with actively using it. So every bit of theory you learn, it'll then take that bit of theory and it'll get you reading it, writing it, and listening to it. So you can really solidify and train your musicianship. I'm really excited about this because it's almost ready, but now I want your input. You can literally leave a comment down below and I will read them. But I want to know, if you could take me out for coffee and ask me any 2 questions on learning practical music theory, what would they be? Do let me know, because I will read these comments, because I'm planning on making some content on this over the next few weeks. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I think it's time for a swim and then a scone. Cheers.